10 animals, 10 moments where biology said stop, and they refused. A flash of frozen alligators locked in solid ice. A wolf collapsed on a highway, barely breathing. A shark covered in scars that should have ended it. An elephant carrying a bullet millimeters from her heart for 4 years. These are not myths. These are not legends passed down around campfires. Every single event you are about to witness has been documented, verified, and in several cases, studied by military researchers trying to understand what human medicine still cannot replicate. What you are about to see broke the rules, not bent them, broke them entirely. And before we get to number 10, you need to know what is waiting at number 1. Scientists described it as the most physically impossible survival ever recorded. A single animal carrying biological tools that connect every creature on this list. Screen goes black. This is where it begins. The scene shifts. A southern swamp in the dead of winter. No birds, no movement. Just a thick, suffocating silence pressing down over still water that has turned to solid ice. And then you see them. Alligator snouts, barely breaking the surface, locked in place, surrounded by ice, bodies completely submerged and motionless beneath the frozen water. Your first instinct is that you are looking at death. Every biological rule you were ever taught says you should be right. Cold-blooded animals do not survive being frozen. Their cells rupture, their organs fail, their bodies simply stop. But these alligators are not dead. They are waiting. And when scientists finally examined what was happening inside the cells of these animals during this frozen suspension, they did not just find an explanation for survival. They found something that forced an entire field of biology to rewrite its foundational assumptions about cold-blooded life on Earth. Picture this. Temperatures plummet. The water around the alligator drops degree by degree. And the animal does not fight it. It surrenders to it completely. The heartbeat slows to almost nothing. Breathing stops. Every organ system powers down in a sequence so precise it looks less like survival and more like a controlled shutdown. Scientists who first witnessed this in documented field conditions described the moment as deeply unsettling, because everything they knew said these animals should be dying. Instead, they were waiting. The metabolic suppression is so total that the alligator essentially becomes a biological pause, not dead, not alive in any conventional sense, something in between. And here is where it gets extraordinary. Inside the cells, something is still running. A quiet, ancient mechanism keeping the architecture intact. Scientists could not immediately explain it. What they eventually found rewired entire frameworks of cold-blooded biology. That cellular secret connects directly to number 1 on this list. But first, number 9 is waiting. And it starts with a crash. But before we get there, cut to black, cut to white, cut to snow. Yellowstone National Park, dead of winter. The kind of silence that feels like the land is holding its breath. And then, impact. A sound you do not forget. A wolf, bloodied, barely breathing, lying on the shoulder of a 2-lane highway like something the wilderness discarded. That is where we are starting, with the ending, because this animal, before that road, before that moment, was not just any wolf. He was the alpha of one of Yellowstone's most dominant packs. A male who had survived brutal winters that killed younger animals outright, who had fought off rival pack incursions across years of territorial warfare, who had, by every measure, been built by nature to be nearly impossible to kill. So the question the narrator is asking you to sit with right now is this. How does an animal forged in survival get taken down by a 2-lane road? And more importantly, how does it survive what came next? Wildlife rangers found the wolf hours after impact. What they documented was brutal. Multiple shattered bones across the hindquarters, internal bleeding in 2 separate cavities, Neurological trauma significant enough that the animal could not hold its own head steady. The veterinary team worked through the night, and privately, not one of them believed it would survive until morning. But it did. Then the second night passed, then a full week. The wolf was defying every clinical projection placed in front of it. When veterinarians finally ran a complete body scan, the room went silent. Not the silence of confusion, the silence of people looking at something they were not prepared to see. That reveal is coming, but not yet, because what that scan showed connects directly to something happening inside the bald eagle arriving at number 8. A biological thread running between these two animals, quiet and ancient, leading somewhere that genuinely unsettled the researchers who followed it to the end. Months later, the wolf was released back into Yellowstone. Slow-motion footage shows it moving through deep snow, a slight limp in its stride, but something unmistakable in its posture. Purpose. This is where the scan reveal finally lands. What veterinarians saw on that screen was neural rerouting. The wolf's nervous system had physically begun redirecting signals around the damaged areas, bypassing destroyed pathways entirely. Scientists had theorized this was possible in wild canines. They had never documented it happening in real time, inside a living animal, with zero medical intervention. The pack was waiting at the tree line. They did not hesitate. Neither did he. That moment, quiet and unhurried, carried more biological weight than almost anything researchers had seen in the field. But the story does not stop here, because number 8 involves a creature that lost something it should never have recovered, and what grew back in its place dismantled every model scientists had carefully built. The Pacific Northwest, dense forest, silence where there should be wind and wingspan. Rangers found it grounded, a bald eagle, motionless on the forest floor, one eye completely destroyed, the other clouded and barely responsive. Its primary feathers were snapped. It was not panicking, it was simply still. And that stillness was the most disturbing part. A bird engineered for altitude, reduced to sitting in the dirt. Rangers assumed it was finished. Rehabilitation staff who received it said the same thing privately. The damage was too extensive, the combination of injuries too severe. But then something began happening inside that bird that no one in the facility had documented before. A biological regeneration event so unusual it prompted a formal scientific inquiry. Researchers filing reports, requesting peer review, struggling to explain what they were watching. And here is what matters most. This connects directly to number 1 on this list. When we get there, everything you have heard so far will suddenly reframe itself completely. Inside the rehabilitation center, something extraordinary began unfolding. The eagle's feather regrowth accelerated beyond anything veterinarians had documented in raptor recovery cases. More striking was what happened with its remaining eye. Through a compensatory neurological process, partial visual function began returning, the brain essentially rewiring itself around the damage to reclaim what it had lost. Scientists investigating this discovered something that stopped the inquiry cold. Birds of prey carry a dormant cellular repair toolkit, one that only activates under conditions of extreme trauma. This toolkit does not belong to the modern eagle. Researchers believe it traces back to a prehistoric ancestor, a biological inheritance buried deep in the genome, waiting for a crisis severe enough to wake it. The narrator pauses here and says quietly, "We will come back to that." Because the crocodile at number 1 carries the same toolkit, and what it did with it is almost incomprehensible. But first, dark water, a scarred predator, and wounds that should have been a death sentence. The ocean now. Dark, warm, shallow coastal water. The kind of place where things go wrong fast and nothing comes to help you. Researchers pulled a bull shark from these waters, and what they found on its body read like a record of every bad decision the ocean had ever made. Bite scars from other sharks, deep and healed over. propeller lacerations running the length of its flank, puncture wounds that, in any other creature, would have opened the door to fatal infection within hours. And yet this animal was not struggling. It was not hiding. It was dominant, actively hunting, thriving in the exact environment that should have finished it. Hold one question in your mind right now. How does a creature living in bacteria-saturated warm water survive wounds that would kill a human being in hours? Because the answer does not start here. It starts back in that frozen swamp with the alligator from number 10. The answer comes down to blood. The bull shark's immune system operates at a level so aggressive it functions like a biological military defense. Its blood contains antimicrobial compounds so potent that pharmaceutical researchers have spent over a decade studying them, searching for applications in human medicine. Wounds that would trigger fatal infection in almost any other creature are neutralized almost instantly inside a bull shark's body. But here is where this story reaches back to number 10. Alligators carry nearly identical blood compounds. Not similar. Nearly identical. Scientists now believe both species inherited this trait from a shared prehistoric ancestor, one that existed long before either modern animal walked or swam the earth. That lineage did not just survive, it perfected survival at the molecular level across millions of years. Let that sit for a moment, because that same ancestor is exactly what number 1 survived like. Stay with me. Number 6 is about to fall 300 feet and refuse to die. High in the Rocky Mountains, a mountain lion moves silently along a cliff edge, tracking prey with absolute precision. Then, it loses its footing. The narrator describes the fall in slow, agonizing detail. 300 feet. Jagged rock faces on the way down. No soft landing waiting at the bottom. Wildlife cameras captured every second. Researchers who reviewed that footage assumed they were watching something die in real time. The mountain lion hit the ground and did not move. The narrator holds that silence deliberately, letting it stretch uncomfortably long. Then, it moved. A paw. Then a head lift. Then something that looked almost like intention. The audience is told that what this animal did in the 72 hours following that impact became one of the most studied events in large feline biology, and it raises a question that scientists, even today, still cannot fully answer. The mountain lion did not survive by luck. Its muscular structure, uniquely dense across the shoulders and hindquarters, absorbed impact forces that would have shattered a human skeleton beyond repair. Its flexible spine distributed the remaining force like a biological shock absorber, something engineers have studied but never fully replicated. But the deeper revelation came from its blood chemistry. Within minutes of impact, the cat's body flooded itself with a natural analgesic and anti-inflammatory cascade so powerful it suppressed shock entirely, keeping organs functioning when they should have been shutting down. Scientists studying this event still cannot fully explain the speed of that response. It remains one of the most documented yet least understood events in large feline biology. If your jaw is on the floor right now, subscribe, because next week gets even darker. Number 5 involves a grizzly bear, 3 bullets, and a healing response so extraordinary that military trauma researchers took notice. We are going there right now. Deep in the Montana wilderness, a grizzly bear is shot 3 times by a poacher and left for dead. Rangers find blood trails cutting through the underbrush, dark, heavy, unmistakable. But no body. Days pass, then a full week. Then trail cameras deep in the forest pick up something that stops everyone in the room cold. The bear, moving through the tree line, eating, functioning. And the wounds, visible on camera, were closing. No veterinary intervention, no antibiotics, no surgical stitching. 3 bullets, 1 week, and a body that appeared to be repairing itself in real time. The rangers who reviewed that footage described it as watching something that should not be possible. And they were right to feel that way, because what was happening inside that animal's body, is something human medicine has spent billions of dollars trying to understand and replicate. And then the military got involved. What researchers found inside that grizzly bear changed the conversation entirely. Grizzly bears possess a trauma response biology unlike almost any other land mammal on Earth. The moment serious injury occurs, their bodies launch a simultaneous cascade. Clotting agents flood the wound site, growth hormones surge, and immune modulators activate in coordinated waves. Scientists describe this as a biological emergency protocol, a system so efficient and so rapid that it operates almost like a pre-programmed response waiting to be triggered. Most mammals handle these processes in sequence. The grizzly runs them in parallel. That distinction is everything. It is the difference between surviving and not. When DARPA-funded researchers learned about this mechanism, they launched a formal study exploring whether elements of this response could be adapted for accelerated human trauma treatment on the battlefield. The grizzly bear, shot 3 times in the Montana wilderness, had essentially demonstrated a field medicine protocol that human science is still trying to engineer. And here is the part that should stop you cold. This same emergency protocol appears in a far more extreme and ancient form in the crocodile waiting at number 1. But first, number 4 is in the ocean, and what happened to it should have been a death sentence. The scene shifts to warm Atlantic waters. Marine biologists are documenting local dolphin populations when they spot something wrong. One bottlenose dolphin is moving differently, slower, listing slightly, staying near the surface. When researchers get close enough, they stop. A massive shark bite wound tears across its flank. Not a graze, not a surface laceration. A chunk of tissue removed so completely that the researchers immediately began photographing it, knowing what they were likely documenting: a final sighting. The wound was deep, wide, and fully exposed to open ocean water. No treatment was coming. No veterinary team was waiting. In those conditions, blood loss and bacterial infection should have ended this animal within days. But something extraordinary began happening beneath the surface of that wound. The narrator's tone drops quieter here, almost reverent, because what this dolphin's body did next is one of the most emotionally striking biological events on this entire list. The research team monitoring this dolphin could not explain what they were seeing. The wound was filling in from the inside out, not scarring over, regenerating. Contour, density, and function returning in real time across open ocean with zero medical intervention. Scientists confirmed that dolphins carry a stem cell-adjacent repair mechanism embedded within their dermal layers, one that appears to activate specifically under traumatic injury. It stays dormant until the body reaches a critical threshold, and then it switches on like something ancient waking up. The wound closed with almost no permanent scarring. The team documented everything, because nothing in their existing models predicted this outcome. The narrator pauses here. This animal was alone. No medicine, no guarantee, no rescue. Just open water and a body that refused to stop. It simply decided to live, and its body listened. Number 3 did not survive with biology alone. It survived with something closer to intelligence. The Great Plains. Winter. Not a gentle winter. A blizzard so catastrophic it killed cattle by the thousands across 3 states. Ranchers lost entire herds overnight. The storm was indiscriminate and absolute. But the American bison did something no other large animal on those plains did. It turned and walked directly into the storm, not away from it, into it. The narrator pauses here because that detail deserves a moment. This is not instinct in the simple sense of the word. This is a calculated behavioral strategy encoded over thousands of years of evolutionary pressure. By moving into the storm rather than retreating from it, the bison dramatically minimized total exposure time. Less time in the blizzard, less damage, more survivors. Scientists call this a form of biological intelligence, not thought as humans understand it, but something older, something deeper, and in many ways far more reliable. And it raises a question the narrator is not going to answer yet, because the answer belongs somewhere else in this list. Is survival instinct simply programming? Or is there something inside these animals that genuinely chooses? Hold that question, because number 2 is the story that hit the research team hardest. Here is the question the bison forces us to ask. Is what we just witnessed simply programming, neurons firing, ancient code executing without awareness? Or is there something deeper happening? Something that looks, uncomfortably, like a choice? Scientists will tell you instinct, evolution, encoded behavior refined across 10,000 generations of brutal winters, and they are not wrong. But watch that herd turn into the wall of white, moving as one, deliberate and unhesitating, and try to feel nothing. Because the line between programmed survival and chosen survival may be thinner than we want to admit. That question matters, because number 2 is where it gets personal. An African elephant, a matriarch, a bullet lodged millimeters from her heart for 4 years. Her herd never left her side. She never stopped leading. When conservationists finally found her, what they saw on the imaging screen silenced the entire room. This one, the narrator says quietly, is going to stay with you. Her name was not given by scientists. Names like that belong to the herd. But the researchers who found her called her Mama, because that is exactly what she was. A matriarch, late 30s, the undisputed center of her family's world. She had been shot by poachers years earlier, and the bullet never left her body. For 4 years she kept leading. Slower, yes. Struggling, absolutely. But leading. When conservationists finally ran imaging, the room went silent. The bullet was millimeters from her heart. The surgery took hours. Every person in that field theater understood the stakes. When the bullet finally came free, someone exhaled so loudly it was caught on the recording. She survived. When she was released back to her herd, what happened in the first 60 seconds was captured on camera. The herd surrounded her instantly, touching her with their trunks, rumbling low. Scientists call it contact behavior. Everyone else calls it what it is. And number 1 makes even this feel like a warm-up. And here we are. Number 1. A flash flood of catastrophic force tears through a river basin, carrying debris, boulders, and raw destruction. A crocodile is caught directly in its path. The impact should have been unsurvivable, physically impossible to walk away from, and yet it did. Now think back. The alligator's cellular freeze response, the bull shark's antimicrobial blood compounds, the bald eagle's prehistoric repair toolkit, the grizzly's emergency biological protocol. Every single thread we have followed tonight converges inside this one animal. The American crocodile carries versions of all of it simultaneously. These animals are not lucky. They are ancient. They are not surviving despite nature. They are nature's most refined answer to destruction. Evolution does not choose its survivors in the moment of crisis. It chose them millions of years ago. Next week, animals nature gave up on entirely. And what happened when they simply refused to accept it?